So there are a few things that I think everybody should know about human psychology. I think they should teach this stuff in school. Your split-second automatic thoughts and feelings are just thoughts and feelings. They might reflect reality. They might have nothing to do with reality. They might have absolutely nothing to do with a person's character or personality or desires. It's just electrical impulses in the brain and in the nerves firing, and that's it. Remember that book, The Secret, like in the early 2000s? It's like, whatever you think, you will manifest that. If you think you're ill, you're going to be ill. Indirectly, some of that is true because your thinking is going to impact the risks you take and the situations you put yourself in and your behaviors, and those are going to result in outcomes. But just sitting around and thinking about something means nothing. It's just a thought. A lot of people, especially people with anxiety or particularly obsessive compulsive disorder, engage in something called magical thinking, and that's when they think that their thoughts or their feelings are indicative of reality. They have a lot of like, if this, then this. Like a common one is, if I talk about this favorably, I'm gonna jinx it. That's a common example of magical thinking. The other thing to know about human brains and nervous systems is that a lot of the mindless behaviors that we engage in that don't really serve us, like going for the whole bag of chips after dinner, buying a whole list of stuff on Amazon late at night, or even just engaging in a thought over and over and over, that's called an obsession. Any of that compulsive stuff is done in an effort to manage that split-second feeling that you have in your body that you don't want in your body. People with obsessive compulsive disorder engage in obsessions or thinking and analyzing and trying to figure out if something is true over and over and over, or compulsions, behaviors like checking and whatever rituals that they have, that releases a feeling of tension inside of them. And the third thing to know about the way human brains work is that the more we try to resist a reactive behavior, the more distress our body takes on, the more we want to engage in the behavior that releases the relief. In other words, the more we tell ourselves not to do something, especially something that's a little bit pleasurable, that gives you a little bit of dopamine, the more likely we are to majorly focus on it and reactively engage in it. Do not think about a purple elephant. Don't think about a purple elephant. Do not think about a purple elephant. Don't. Oh my gosh, my dog was just bothered by my tone of voice. I'm sorry, Layla. Anyway, have you ever tried to go on a restricted diet? Hopefully not. It might work for a few days, but then all you can do is think about that yummy yummies that you're not allowing yourself to eat. And the willpower of steel does not keep you away from that dessert. Now that you know a little bit about how brains work and how restricting something that's pleasurable and gives you dopamine and relief can actually make you need that relief even more urgently and can backfire and make you do it more, we're going to talk about how to rein in a behavior that isn't serving you in a way that doesn't backfire and make you do it even more. So what do we have to do? There's 3 concrete techniques that I like to offer people for that. All 3 of these techniques require you to be keyed into what is going on with your body. Basically, to have a mindful relationship where you observe the sensations and thoughts that are coming up in you without judgment and without a knee-jerk reaction to manage it or make it go away or analyze it. The first one is just replacing shoulds and need to with coulds. Instead of saying, no, you can't eat the cupcake, notice what's going on with you and say, I could eat the cupcake, or I could, and fill in the second could with something very specific. Or I could put these cupcakes in the refrigerator and walk into the other room. And you have to toggle back and forth between the two. I could do this, and then pick one. It really doesn't matter which one you pick. In fact, if you don't give yourself permission occasionally to pick the cupcake, all you're doing is going through the exercise, but secretly maintaining the mindset of, we all know we're really doing this so we don't eat the cupcake. And your brain knows what you're doing, so it just increases the urge for the cupcake. Part of the brain training is occasionally indulging in the I could do the indulgent thing. Let's talk about the could technique with obsessions. Let's say you're ruminating on a really common one. Is another person mad at me? You're going over and over and over in your mind. Is he mad at me? Is he mad at me? Well, I don't know. And you're trying to figure out if you're analyzing it. You're trying to figure out if it's true. Well, last night I said this and he didn't respond. And then I said this and he texted back this. And that's obsession. And more engaging in that or analyzing that, like I said before, is being registered by your brain as an attempt to get rid of it. So it's going to increase the obsession. So you're going to go, I could continue to think about this and make a whole list about all the reasons that he could be mad at me or all the reasons that he's not mad at me and try to figure it out. Or I could call a friend and talk about what we're going to do this weekend. I could keep indulging in this thinking. Or I could go for a run and listen to some of my favorite music. Like I said, sometimes you have to allow yourself to indulge in the thing because what you're really doing is training your brain to have flexibility so that next time you have that urge, you're less at the whim of your nervous system, which feels endangered by its restriction, and you can choose what you're going to do and be more in the driver's seat and less reactive. In fact, I read an anxiety manual about a dozen years ago, and one of the techniques is still stuck in my head because it's so useful. And basically, they said, when you start obsessing about something, give yourself the option to obsess about it for 7 minutes, especially if it's something really negative. Say, brain, you have 7 minutes. Give me all you got. Give me all your what if and your catastrophizing and all your worst case scenarios and how horrible this is. And that's taking away that sense of restriction and make it stop and embracing it. And by the 5th minute, the obsessive thoughts are coming in a little bit more slowly. And theoretically, by the 7th minute, you're kind of like, I don't really have much more. The second technique is similar to introducing coulds, but it's instead of thinking of something concrete you could do, you are introducing the practice of feeling whatever's coming up in your body for 2 breaths. And the reason for that is because, like I said before, a lot of these reactive behaviors are to make an ick feeling release and make an ick feeling go away and feel more like pleasure. So if you can instead lean into that ick feeling without having to make it go away, you're training your brain to be less compulsive or reactive. So what that looks like is, I want to eat the cupcake. I'm noticing that I have this, oh my gosh, I need to eat this cupcake. I don't know if it quite serves me. I know intuitive eating is really popular right now, but I'm talking about people who don't quite know in that moment if eating this thing is in service to their body and what their body needs, or even an intentional pursuit of a pleasurable sensory experience, what the body wants. They're just going for it to make the feeling go away, to make the icky or overwhelmed or tight or whatever feeling go away. So you're gonna say, I could eat the cupcake, or I could, for 2 breaths, let myself feel what I'm feeling. And 2 breaths later, you do the same thing. I could eat the cupcake, or I could, for 2 breaths, let myself feel what I'm feeling. And you know what? Like I said before, sometimes you gotta gobble up that cupcake because you're training your brain to legitimately believe it, that you could eat the cupcake. No restrictions here. But a large percentage of the time, that cozying up to what's going on with you, instead of doing something reactively to get rid of it, is going to make you less likely to go for the cupcake. So I suggest the 2 breath technique often for people who engage in compulsions. That feeling inside of them might be so horrible and like they're ready to burst and they just have to do something to get rid of it. It's very anxiety provoking, actually. So they're not going to go walk the dog as their alternate behavior, but they could sit there for 2 breaths. And if they're especially tight, we'll change it to 1 breath, and that's a start. And the third practical technique is think about a typical day and think about the contexts or times of the day, like maybe right when you get home from work or right when you're getting out the door. Maybe you got kids to take to school, or after your lunch break every day when you walk back into the office, when you're hit by the reality of stress again. There's going to be certain times in the day that you notice that overwhelm or anxiety or something more heavy is happening in your mind and body. And then think to yourself, do I engage in any reactive behaviors or ways of thinking in order to get rid of that feeling? Do I sit down at my desk and immediately scroll TikTok? Do I yell at my kids to get out the door? Do I go for the yummies in Charlene's candy dish? Do I text my husband a heated text about something that happened 2 months ago? I promise I've never done that. Don't ask my husband though, okay? Then ahead of time, change something in the environment to make sure you put time between your reactive urge and your ability to engage in the behavior. Basically, if I know every night at 8 o'clock I go in the kitchen and stress eat some ice cream, I'm gonna keep the ice cream in the downstairs freezer. Or if you can't put more time between your reactive instinct and the behavior, give yourself a Post-it note or some other reminder to ground yourself and slow down. When my kids were little, my biggest crunch time was getting out of the house and into the car. So I would put a Post-it note on the inside of my door and put a Post-it note on my steering wheel just to cue me to breathe. It was nothing fancy, but it made me be less automatic. It made me be more mindful of what was going on with me. All right, I hope those tips helped you guys out. Certainly send this to anybody that you think might benefit from it, and have a great rest of the day.